Tahani Mustafa is a senior Palestine analyst with the International Crisis Group, and she's joining us from Amman. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. Given the fact that there are so many outstanding elements and unanswered questions with regard to particularly Israel's commitment towards Phase 2 and ultimately Phase 3, what hopes are there that we are going to see any sort of progress to the second phase?
Well, I mean, we definitely need to be cautious in terms of how optimistic we are being about Phase 2, especially in terms of the negotiations now going, where Israel has rescinded very much what had been initially agreed upon back in December, early January. Also, it's been very evident from Israeli politicians, senior Israeli politicians, where they have come out with statements the last couple of days, the last few weeks, that basically undermine any potential for a Phase 2. They've made it very, very clear that they're not interested in a Phase 2. The Israeli public are not really interested in seeing a permanent cessation of hostilities. What they are interested in is seeing the full release of hostages, which is what we've seen parroted by Israeli officials. But in terms of a serious withdrawal of Israeli troops, a full proper exchange of Palestinian prisoners, as well as a permanent cessation of hostilities with Hamas, Israel has been very, very clear that that is in no way on the cards at the moment.
Hamas has been saying that it is committed to all stages of the ceasefire. It has returned Israeli captives so far. And yet, with the fact that Israel is, in some cases, not living up to its side of the bargain, as it were, what is left for Hamas to do? Does it keep approaching the guarantors, Qatar, Egypt and the US, for the ceasefire?
Well, look, it's in Hamas's interest right now to see a cessation of hostilities. That is what Hamas is trying to push for, despite the fact that we've seen over 400 Israeli violations of what had been agreed upon, at least in Phase 1, and despite statements to the effect basically undermining any potential for a Phase 2 from the Israeli side. Now, Hamas has tried to be as flexible as it can. It's still trying to, at least from its end, commit to what had been agreed upon. But again, I think we have to expect that there are going to be limitations in terms of what Hamas can put up with. It's very clear that Israel is looking for any excuse to continue its current onslaught. It's very clear that it's trying to build a case in order to either derail negotiations to Phase 2 or indefinitely postpone them if it's not able to derail the entire process. Now, Hamas has tried to, from its end, at least try and commit to what it has agreed to. But as I said, there are limits in terms of what it will be able to put up with. And Phase 2 is really where the more substantial concessions that Hamas have asked for come into play, which is a permanent cessation of hostilities and the full withdrawal of Israeli troops. Now, if Israel can't commit to that, then Hamas has been very, very clear, even from the outset, that it is ready, if it needs to be, to continue. But that's not really the first option that it would prefer if the choice is between negotiations and continued war.
If it gets to the stage where Israel is not prepared to have any negotiations at all about Phase 2 and we remain the stage that we're at the moment, how do you think things are going to play out on the ground in Gaza and, of course, also in the occupied West Bank?
Well, I mean, in the context of Gaza, it's for many skeptics, I'd say, of this recent sort of ceasefire deal that's sort of started in January, many really didn't anticipate Phase 1 to even be completed as far as it has been. And I think many, considering the circumstantial evidence, are expecting at least Israel to stay true to its word, which is to indefinitely try and put off any potential of seriously ending its onslaught in Gaza. So we could very well see Israel continue its campaign at a much lower intensity, I think would be best case, and where Gazans find themselves being pushed into smaller and smaller pockets of territory, dependent on limited aid for everything. It really doesn't look like we're going to see much end in sight in the context of Gaza. No serious reprieve for the people of Gaza. In the context of the West Bank, Israel has already made it very clear that it intends to escalate things. We've already seen since the announcement of the ceasefire, where Israel has implemented its Operation Iron Wall, where we've seen the worst level of movement restrictions, checkpoints that we've seen in recent history in the West Bank, where we are seeing increasing fatalities that are looking to outnumber 2024 and 2023. And worse yet, as many Palestinians as Israel has been releasing, it is also now arresting in the West Bank. So Israel has made it very clear that it intends to escalate this. And this is something that definitely regional and Palestinian mediators were warning about when we were talking about a potential for a ceasefire in Gaza, that this would come at a cost for Palestinians. And that's exactly what we're seeing, at least in the West Bank, where Palestinians are now being forced to pay with more land and more of their rights simply diminishing.
Tahani Mustafa, International Crisis Group, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.